Welcome class to lesson 5-1. Today, strong mathematicians can explore the system of metric units of length. So you can get out your notebook, your pencil, write down today's date, the name of the lesson, and let's get started. So first one in our box notes, as we start a new unit, we started learning some new vocabulary words. So the metric system, it's a base 10 system of measurement. It is what 95% of the world uses, and it makes lots of sense because we do all of our counting and adding using a base 10 system. So that's why this system is going to probably make a lot of sense once we catch on to how it works. And then meter is the base unit of length in the metric system. So it's always going to be meter. You're going to hear the word meter in all the other words, kind of like the root word. And we're going to see what that means and what a meter is. Think of a meter stick. That is the base unit of the length. So you pause this down, write down these notes in your notebook. So here we go. We start to break down some of these little terms and these little words. So right now you see we have a picture of a ruler on there. It's broken into different metric units. And we're going to discuss these through each of these notes. So the first one we have right here is we have a millimeter. So that's mm, stands for millimeter. Notice that here's our base word of meter, and then we have milli, which would be like our prefix to make it a millimeter or millimeter. What is it? It is a unit of length in the metric system that is 1,000th of a meter. So that means 1,000 millimeters equal 1 meter. So if you look right here on the board from this line to this line, that is how big 1 millimeter is. So a very small unit of measurement. You also want to write down this little, I call these like ratios. Because this is going to help you out as we continue to move forward, because this is a unit where you can definitely use your notes to help you with your tests. We care that you know how to convert and use the system, not memorizing all these numbers and whatnot. So you can pause this right now, write down millimeter as one of your vocabulary words. The next one is centimeter. Centimeter, so the abbreviation would be cm. So there you go, you see centi again. Would be the prefix. Meter is our base word of length. It's a unit of length in the metric system that equals 1/100th of a meter. Notice the millimeter is 1,000th, and now this is 1/100th of a millimeter. So 1 centimeter would be from this line right here to this line right there. That's how big a centimeter would be. So there would be 100 centimeters in a meter. Would be another important ratio to write down. So you can pause the video right now and write your notes down. And the last one we're talking about on the smaller side is a decimeter. A decimeter, so dm is the abbreviation. As you can see, it's right there. So we've got deci is the prefix, and there's meter again as our base word. So it's a unit of length in the metric system that is 1/10th of a meter. So you have 10 decimeters equals 1 meter. So where's that? So we started 1 here. The first one, so it goes 1 all the way over to this side. That's how big 1 decimeter is. So notice to keep going by tens. One was 1/1000th. One was 1/100th. Now it's 1/10th. So therefore it keeps getting bigger by multiples of 10. So you can pause the video right now, write down this information on decimeter. So now we see some other units of length. The ones that we did were all on the smaller side, right? So these are all smaller. That we did were millimeter, centimeter, and decimeter. Notice meter is our base unit of length. Like we talked about, it's our base. It's just with an M all by itself. So if you ever see a single letter, that always refers to a base unit in the metric system. And now we're talking about one of the bigger ones. There are two more. There's a decameter right here. And there's a hectometer, but we don't really spend a lot of time with those measurements. They're not very common measurements. The most common one you see is a kilometer. And this is the one we have right here. So km is the abbreviation. Its prefix is kilo. There's meter again. There's our base unit. So it's a unit of length in metric system that equals 100 meters. So if you think about 1 meter and you think about it would be 100 meter sticks to equal 1 kilometer. So you can pause the video right now and write down that note as well as we go through it. So right now, some examples. So we think about things are, what is 1 millimeter long? So think about what is a millimeter again. A millimeter is from right here to right here. So things that are really small, that's how big they are. So it's not really big at all. So I think maybe a pin would be about that big. I'm trying to think of maybe maybe a sideways paper clip. Maybe a paper clip would be some examples of things that are that long. What about a centimeter? So now we can kind of see these all in the same one. So centimeters from here to here. I don't know how that little one got in there. We'll erase that little part. Knuckle must have dragged it. There you go. So that's how big a centimeter is. Notice there's actually 10 millimeters in a centimeter, as you can see right there on the chart. So what's about a centimeter long? I think a centimeter, probably maybe a penny. If you put a penny down, a penny would be about a centimeter long. What else could be a centimeter long? Probably the width of looking at a highlighter right now, maybe the width of a highlighter. So see if we can come up with other things that are about that long as well. And last but not least, we have a decimeter. So a decimeter is going to start at the same spot, but it's going to be way over here is how long a decimeter is. So what's about a decimeter length? I'm thinking probably a crayon. The length of a crayon would be probably that. Maybe a golf pencil, since I like to golf. They have those little short pencils on there. So some things that are about that distance long. So it's going to get an idea of those measurements and what do they represent by things that we can actually measure in the real world. So with that, we'll move on to some conversions now. So how many millimeters are there in 1 centimeter? So using this ruler is really helpful. And we kind of talked about this in the last slide. If you look at 1 centimeter is right here. So here's 1 centimeter, and it's at this line right here. So if we count back, because each of these little ones were millimeters, we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, it's right there for us, but I want to show you how it actually works on each of those. So how many millimeters are in 1 centimeter? That would be 10 millimeters. Notice we need a label to go with this as well. So how many millimeters are in 1 decameter? Well, if this is decameters right here with our blue, here's our decameter. Our decameter 1's way down here. So if we work our way up, if we said this would be, it would be 10 centimeters, but we're not doing centimeters, we're measuring still millimeters. So this is where those labels kind of make sure we're really paying attention to what unit we're measuring. It would actually be, it could be 10 centimeters, which would then mean it would be 100. So if I would count from right here all the way to the beginning, I would count 100 little mines. So that would be 100 millimeters. So you can write down this ratio that 1 centimeter equals 10 millimeters and 1 decimeter equals 100 millimeters. So coming up with these ratios and developing how they go together is going to help us as we move forward. And now we go to the other thing. This is how many millimeters are there in 1 meter. So using this chart, I like this part right here that's kind of a little fuzzy, but every time you go from one unit to the next unit, you're going to multiply it by 10. And we go from this, so that'd be times 10. This would be 10 times 10. This would be 10 times 10 times 10. So if you think about this is 1. 1 times 10 would be 10. So you have 10 decimeters equals 1 meter. Then you times it by 10 again, which would give you 100 centimeters equals 1 meter. And you would times it by 10 again, which would give you 1,000 millimeters equals 1 meter. So 1 meter equals 1,000 millimeters. And we're going to have a good saying to help us memorize this and go through and help us remember the parts and how we do it all. So next one is how many meters are equal to 1 kilometer. So if I start right here, so I'm going to start, if I'm trying to figure out my distance, I'm starting with kilometer. So I'm going to kind of put a circle around here. And I want to go to meter. So that's where I'm starting, that's where I'm finishing. So now I got to go and figure out how many leaps is that. So remember, every time I make a thing, that's times 10. This would be times 10, and this would be times 10. So that would mean if it's 3 humps, it looks right here, I have 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer. So you write down these two ratios again and add those to your notes. So now we always start with 1, but what happens if I have more than 1? What if I have 4 meters? Well, how many would be 4 centimeters? Well, that's a really good question. So I have 4 meters. This would be my starting point. So I would say I'm going to circle my starting point, and I'm going to end on centimeters. So I would say kind of like X marks the spot. And I got to figure how many jumps am I making. So I'm making 1 jump. And inside each jump, I usually put times 10 as a reminder that I have to multiply it by 10. I have to make another jump to get there, so it'd be another times 10. So I know 10 times 10 is 100. So if I had 1 meter, that would equal 100 centimeters. But since I have 4 of those, that means 4 times 100 would give me 400 centimeters. So usually I try to find what's the base ratio, then I multiply it by how many I actually have right there. So our next one we're going to look at is with 3 kilometers. So 3 kilometers. So as I said before, I'm going to circle where I'm starting, kilometers. I'm going to meters, so I need to put a X on meters because X marks the spot. I make one jump, times that by 10. I make another jump, times that by 10. And I make my third jump to my X, that means I'm going to times it by 10. So 10 times 10 is 100. 100 times 10 is 1,000. So I know 1 kilometer equals 1,000 meters, which would mean if I would have 3 kilometers, I would have 3 groups of 1,000, so I would have 3,000 meters. So you can pause the video right now and write down that information and see how I found that relationship to help me find out a problem within that relationship. Also, if you want to draw the thing out, how I made the jumps from these, it could also be helpful as well. Now it's your turn, so I want you to draw a big line on your paper, label it box 3, now your turn. And I want you to write down these following problems and work through them. Said, how many millimeters are in a 1 decimeter? And how many centimeters are in 1 decimeter? So you can pause the video right now, write out that equation, that relationship, to show me millimeters and decimeters and how they are equal. And then centimeters and decimeters and how they are equal. Here's another problem for you. How many centimeters are in 1 meter? And how many decameters are in 1 kilometer? So different units get used to going from one unit to another and figure out what is that relationship between them. And last but not least, now we're going to take 5 meters and tell me how many millimeters is that? And also 8 kilometers and how many meters is that? So I want to see you starting to find those relationships that can help you understand that how can I go from one unit to another unit of measurement. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to write them down or share them out. If you have any strategies that you use to help you, make sure you share those as well to help others who still might be struggling with this topic. And thanks again for another great lesson.